This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined a Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
What I want to do today is to put together a wish list for every day of the draft. So this isn't a list of all the players I want on the Cleveland Browns, but I'm saying for each day of the draft, of the players that I mentioned, I want one of these players for this specific reason or not. Basically, 3 guys, 3 days of the draft that I would really like if the Browns could get one of them in the list. So, for example, so you understand how this works, so let's talk about my day one wish list. Now, my day one wish list isn't very big. It's Abdul Carter. It's Travis Hunter. You take one of those 2 guys in day one of the draft, I'm happy. You don't got to get them both. It's almost impossible to get them both. But if you get one of those guys, cool. We're rolling. I like it. We did good, right? I'm going to be happy on day one of the draft if you make one of those choices. So that's kind of how this wish list works. Now, I've talked enough about Travis. I have film breakdowns about Travis Hunter. I have film breakdowns on this channel on Abdul Carter. I have talked about these 2 ad nauseum. I don't really feel the need to further explain to the audience why I like these 2 prospects. I just think they are 2 uniquely good prospects in this draft class. Travis has the whole package on 2 sides of the ball. Abdul has the whole package on 1 side of the ball. Either way, both these players would be very happy to see in brown and orange, and not going to get too particular over which one. I like the future of having one of these 2. That's why they're both on the wish list, and I'd be happy with one of them. All right, the day 2 wish list. If I can get one of these players in day 2, I think I'll be happy. Jalen Milroe, Shedeur Sanders, Elick Ayamaner, Travion Henderson, Andrew Mukuba. Now, some of these guys I think about more at pick 93 than I would at pick not 93. Well, yeah, pick 93 or in the 3rd round versus 33. Some of these guys would be on the wish list at 33. Specifically, the wish list at 33. Jalen Milroe, Shedeur Sanders, Elick Ayamaner. If you can get one of those guys, I'm not going to be mad at a Josh Connerly or Josh Simmons, but one of those 3 guys, I think that'd be a really good choice for the Cleveland Browns. Here's why. With Jalen Milroe, I talked about him a lot. I talked about Shedeur Sanders a lot, right? Basically, my too long didn't read on Jalen Milroe. I think he's much more progressed as a passer than people give him credit for. And I think he's much more workable as a passer than people give him credit for. And he is one of the best, if not the best athletes in this class. And I think his floor is a lot higher than what people give it credit for. Like when we compare Shedeur Sanders' floor to Jalen Milroe's floor, and I think a lot of people say, oh, Shedeur's floor is so much higher than Jalen Milroe's. I think we're making the classic mistake, right? And it's the mistake that we've made with a lot of players in the draft recently, especially at the quarterback position, which is we're assuming because a guy plays a style of football that we're more accustomed to seeing in the NFL, that means his floor is high in the NFL. But the truth is that a lot of the players that fall through the crack and just like end up having lower floors than you ever imagined are not the prospects that you would think because they were the high upside guy, right? Like it's almost one of those things where it's like the higher the upside, the lower the floor you feel like you have to say the guy has. But like think of somebody like Josh Rosen. Nobody looked at Josh Rosen in 2018 and said to themselves, Josh Rosen has the lowest floor in that draft class. I'm pretty sure people said to themselves, Josh Allen had a lower floor. than Josh Rosen, and Lamar Jackson, most certainly people were saying, had a lower floor than Josh Rosen. But what we found out was that the floor for Lamar Jackson especially, but even Josh Allen, was much higher than it could be with Josh Rosen, because Josh Rosen didn't have any extraordinary talents to lean on, where Josh Allen was extraordinarily big and athletic for a man that big. With Lamar Jackson, he was extraordinarily athletic. And what gave those guys a floor early in their NFL career that was much higher than Josh Rosen's was that exceptional natural ability that they had to just be able to survive out there in the NFL game. I tend to think the floor of a quarterback, you can determine it a lot better when you look at their natural gifts versus their skill set. I don't think a skill set in the NFL gives you a floor, because the NFL is just so skill heavy that it's so difficult to have a floor based on skill set in the NFL. So I think we're overrating a bit the floor with Shedeur. I think Shedor's floor is as low as anybody's, right? If Josh Rosen had a low floor, right, then the same could be true for anybody else in this draft class. Because if Shedeur cannot pass, or Shedor's not athletic enough to be in the NFL, or his arm talent just doesn't translate well, or his pocket mechanics don't translate well, then he is gonna be borderline useless in the NFL. With Jalen Milroe, I think his floor is actually higher than Shedeur's, because even if Jalen can't be a good passer, I mean, the floor is still there for him to do something with the ball in his hands, where it's just not there for Shedeur Sanders. So maybe that's my hot take, that I think Jalen Milroe's floor is a lot higher than people are anticipating. And the athletic ability does make up for a lot of the lack of skill when you're entering the NFL, and that's usually more reliable. Again, we could look at the 2018 draft as an example of that, but like, look at the trends in the draft. Like, these guys who we were like, oh, their floor is so low, they're such a project. These are guys who are good early on because they have those exceptional traits, right? Mitchell Trubisky, his floor was supposed to be way higher than Patrick Mahomes' floor, right? And he was supposed to be pro ready way before Patrick Mahomes was supposed to be pro ready. And Pat Mahomes ended up winning his MVP in the second year of his career. Same thing could be said with the CJ Stroud, Bryce Young thing, where the thing that separated CJ Stroud from Bryce Young in a lot of people's minds was that Bryce played in a more pro-ready system, and that Bryce was a more pro-ready prospect. But then CJ walks onto the scene and he's incredible to start the day, and he ends up being a all-pro caliber player year one. Jaden Daniels, right? The whole thing with Jaden Daniels, Drake May, the conversation between it. Drake May has more transferable NFL skills, but Jaden Daniels, he has to adjust to the NFL. He can't run like that. He's going to make an adjustment. Plus he's 23. Ended up being that Jaden Daniels, the more spectacular athlete, was able to hold his own a little bit faster than some of these other guys in that same draft class. So my whole thing, what I'm saying is that we tend to look at floor for a quarterback. And again, I have both these guys on my wish list, so don't think I'm trashing one to build up another. But I don't love the argument for Shedeur, if you like Shedeur, that it's about his floor. Because I don't think that floor is measured correctly. And I think we're really overestimating how much skill and what you do in college can translate to the NFL. It's more about how talented you are, right? Physically. And if we're measuring floor like that, then I think Jalen Milroe's floor is higher than Shedeur's, who I do worry about the athletic transition for Shedeur Sanders. Like, I don't see it that way. That's why I have these two basically on par with each other as far as what I would do there, because if you can sell yourself on Milroe having a similar floor to Shedeur, the upside with Milroe, I think it's harder to access than Shedeur Sanders' upside. And I think that's what people might be talking about when they talk about floor, is that the upside, how accessible is the upside for a player, right? I think Jalen Milroe's upside is going to be a lot harder to access as a football team than Shedeur Sanders' upside. But I think the upside that Jalen Milroe has is much higher than Shedeur Sanders. He could be a game breaker in the NFL, where Shedeur will be a good quarterback, solid starter if he accesses his upside. Again, So that's kind of how I view it, right? Do you want the more accessible upside or the one that's a little bit more inaccessible, but boy, if you get to it, you got something? I don't think floor matters in this conversation because I think Jalen Milroe's floor is higher than Shador's. It's more about how likely do you think it's that guy hits their ceiling? Is Shador more likely to hit his ceiling than Jalen Milroe? I think so. But is that something that you're willing to sacrifice upside for? It's a big question there, right? Either way, both these guys, you got to give a couple of years because I don't think Shador's going to be great his first year. And then Jalen Milroe, he'll be limited in his first year. Let's go to the next guy on the list, Elick Ayamaner. I just like wide receivers like Elick Ayamaner, really good route runner, physical, good big size here. I get certain like Brandon Ayuk, Amari Cooper vibes when I watch him, and I think he's going to be a really good player. Travion Henderson would be thrilled to add him to the Cleveland Browns. Great pass protector. I think he will pair well with bringing back Nick Chubb, which I think the Browns should absolutely do, and just adds more athleticism, more speed, more explosiveness to this Cleveland Browns offense in a rushing game that desperately needs that kind of speed and athleticism. Andrew Makuba, I like him a lot. Explosive defensive player, really physical, hits guys really hard, can teleport across the field, and a guy who can step in there and play in the slot, which is important if you decide to move on from Greg Newsome this offseason. But all stuff there. If you get one or two of these guys in day 2 of the draft, I'm going to be a happy camper. Happy camper. All right, let's go to my day 3 wish list. Will Howard, Harold Fanin, Gunnar Helm, DJ Giddens, Kobe Bryant, Trevor Etienne, Damian Martinez. Let me work down the list. Will Howard, again, don't know what a quarterback's floor is. A lot of this is based in skill. I think he will be a backup, right? Because he does have good size, and I think that will help him kind of catch up in the NFL earlier on. I think he'll be a decent backup in the league at the very least. I think the upside for him, if he can get his arm to be a little bit more consistent, a little bit more powerful and accurate when he's trying to be powerful, then I think you're talking about somebody who could give you kind of can access an Andy Dalton level ceiling there, right? Like him as a quarterback, just don't like him in the first 2 days of the draft a ton. Maybe like pick 93 or somewhere in the back end of the 3rd round, but I really like him more in the 4th round conversation because I don't want to take him and have all my chips pushed in on him. But if you can do a Kirk Cousins, right, RG3 situation, I think he's the perfect guy to be the Kirk Cousins in the Kirk Cousins RG3 situation. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about there, the Commanders once upon a time took RG3 number 2 overall and then took Kirk Cousins in the 4th round. I look at him as a perfect quarterback to take just to supplement a risk you're taking earlier in the draft. So if he's there in the 4th, 5th round and you took Jalen Milroe, pick 32, 33, yeah, I get it. Harold Fanin, like him as a tight end, vertical threat, really good athlete. He's going to have to wait a year to play, but, I think super young guy, a lot of potential there. Gunnar Helm is an immediate fit at tight end 2 for the Cleveland Browns. Would like him there. DJ Gittens, love him. He's my 3rd favorite running back for the Cleveland Browns behind Travion and Caleb Johnson. Kobe Bryant, really strong physical defensive back. Like him a lot. Trevor Etienne, explosive athlete, right? Kind of look, we ain't got Travion Henderson, but we got Travion Henderson at home. That's where I view Trevor Etienne. Like him a lot there. And then Damian Martinez. Why? Because I just like running backs who can get you 4 yards. Right. And that's what Damian Martinez is. Is he going to run the ball and get you about 12 yards? 15 big breaks, break off a big touchdown run? No, that's not Damian Martinez. But Damian Martinez, along with like somebody like Quincy Junkins, shoot him out of cannon, right? Like they're going to move shit on the offensive line. They're going to move bodies, bang really hard. Love that from a running back. I think Damian Martinez was really good for Miami last year, kind of underrated. I think a lot of that Miami team around Cam Ward is kind of underrated. But those are my 3 days of wish list items on this year's draft. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. And let's specifically focus on that question of how we talk about ceilings and floors, because I don't really think a floor is a real thing for a quarterback prospect the way that we talk about it, because you can be a really skilled player in college and fall through your floor. We saw Josh Rosen do that. We've seen plenty of other guys in the NFL do that. But what we're really talking about, or at least trying to talk about when we talk about floor, is how likely do you think somebody is to hit their ceiling? And that's where I think the conversation gets interesting for Jalen Milroe and Shedeur Sanders, because again, I think Shedeur is much more likely to hit his ceiling, which I put at like Tua, right? I think he could be Tua in the NFL, than Jalen Milroe, who I put at like Colin Kaepernick. But if he hits that ceiling, I mean, Colin Kaepernick was a explosive playmaker, a game breaker, and somebody who was good enough to elevate a really good San Francisco 49ers team to come in a play away from winning a Super Bowl. Like, you can win a Super Bowl with what Jalen Milroe could be at his best. The question is, are you willing to bet on him hitting that ceiling when it's a little bit or a good chunk more unlikely than Shedeur Sanders if they're both there? That's the real question we need to have. Ceiling, floor, those are what they are, because you can easily say Jalen Milroe has a higher ceiling, a higher floor than Shedeur because he's more athletic, and Jalen Milroe has a higher ceiling because he's more talented physically. And that doesn't mean that you should always take Jalen Milroe over Shedeur Sanders, because the percentage to hit that ceiling, it's a little bit different. This percentage for him to hit that floor, it's a little bit different than Shedeur Sanders. But y'all let me know what you think in the comment section below. Because that's the kind of the question that I've been pondering on my head as the draft keeps coming closer. And it seems like there might be a chance that Shedeur could be there when the Cleveland Browns are ready to make a move at the end of the first, early second. And these are questions you got to answer to yourself. Y'all let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.